Hello, everybody. I'm Ehren. Welcome to QPC Canada, Question Period Canada. We've got a great episode today. We're in for a treat, something strange. Canadian politics, right? Like, subscribe. We're into it. We're getting into it. So we'll jump away right here and see what we're looking at. Should be an interesting day in the House. We'll jump right into it. This is Greg Fergus, the speaker. This is a strange start to question period.
The speaker would like to make a statement about order and decorum in the House.
Après 8 ans de ce gouvernement, le taux d'inflation.
After 8 years with this government, inflation is the highest it's ever been in Quebec.
But something's going on. And now the role of the Speaker of the House, just to anybody that might not know, is they're an MP that is elected by their peers. And this is a new replacement. Anthony Rhoda had to go.
Opportunity to start with oral questions once I just make this statement to the House.
This is not protocol.
Question period will follow immediately after this statement.
Question period.
That's question period. Okay, so they zipped the volume on us there, so I don't know what's going on. He's like Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. Looks just like him, sounds like him, acts like him. He's a little bit Vulcan, maybe. Half Vulcan. With his logic.
May I ask the honourable member, please, to take his seat for a moment while I consult with the table.
So he's needing to consult with the table. Since his first day, he's been struggling to control the House. Like, I think the House must be rowdier than he would appreciate them being. I'm not sure. But this is definitely a strange thing. Canadian politics is fun to watch.
So, colleagues,
it's very interactive, very Westminster.
Colleagues, the Speaker has the choice as to when to start question period. There will be a full question period that will follow after this declaration from the Speaker. It's important for us to make this declaration.
So he's going to make his speech here, probably try to round the troops. Oh, he was a Liberal MP before he was elected to the
point of order,
chair.
The Honourable House.
So he manages.
I'd like to remind the chair of Standing Order 5A, time for statements by members, oral questions, orders of the day. At 2 p.m. on Mondays, not later than 2:15 p.m., as the case may be, oral questions shall be taken up. Not may be taken up, shall be taken up. It's well past 2:15, Mr. Speaker.
So the Conservatives are pissed off that they haven't started, and that's been the way that it has been the last while since Greg took over. It's been starting late. And so it would seem like the babysitter is getting in trouble by the children they're babysitting. When the babysitter was trying to give a speech about how to conduct themselves. It'll be interesting. I don't know what's up with them cutting the audio. That's a weird one. They'll figure it out. I'm sure there'll be some heated moments because of this.
It is important for members to understand that we have dérogé de cette habitude de commencer.
That we have moved away from starting exactly on time.
Le président, la présidence va faire cette déclaration.
The Speaker will make a statement. It's not my intention to make this a habit.
That's good to hear.
But according to the standing orders, I do have the opportunity of starting oral questions after my statement.
Just laying down the law.
The honourable member from Regina.
His version of it.
The Speaker ought to know when rules are not followed, when there is a derogation from a rule, when that is pointed out to the Speaker then enforces the rules. These standing orders are the property of the House. It's up to the House to decide when we're not going to follow a rule or when we're going to change a rule. This is a standing order that the House has adopted. You are a servant of the House. You should follow the standing order.
Servant, Tuva. You're a servant, Andrew Scheer says. That's quite a statement. These clowns, man. Sausage factory. Pretty funny. I wonder now, is Greg going to come back at him and say, no, 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 my rules, my house? Let's see. Let's see what he says.
I'd like to thank the honourable member from Regina Capel for pointing out the standing orders, and indeed he is correct. There are written standing orders.
Okay. However, there's orders,
there
but
is a long tradition in this House that the Speaker has the ability to making sure. Can I ask the honourable member to please allow me?
It's
to
opening up
finish
hot,
as I have
guys.
the
It's pretty
floor at this time?
interesting.
I'll be
It's
happy to
very
recognize the honourable member for
argumentative.
For a point of
Rowdy.
order. It is really important that we understand that the Speaker does
He's
have this
so
ability to make a statement. We will have full oral questions at the end of this statement from the Speaker. It is an important
Get to the
message,
statement, man.
which I think members would appreciate hearing, because it gives an indication as to how the Speaker is going to be proceeding in the months and years to follow.
Yeah, he's trying to lay down the precedent so in the future it's better for him and he can control them. I don't know if they're going to listen.
As
though.
promised before the constituency week.
You can tell he's getting a little frustrated. You can see his body language.
Every day in this House, the opposition has the occasion
Pierre.
to respond to the actions of and hold the government accountable for its actions on behalf of Canadians. That happens at 2:15 every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That is not a may, that is not a possible, that is a shall.
Shall.
There is nothing in the clause that creates question period in the standing orders that allows the Speaker to arbitrarily change the time in order to give a speech. I will note that the Speaker has a plethora of occasions to stand on his feet and make any point he wants or any declaration he likes. He does not need to do it in the middle of the sacred period during which we hold the government to account. Now I see, no, if I'm Mr. Speaker, if I may, this is the first time in all of my years here that I have seen a Speaker interrupt question period to make a speech. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And I furthermore...
This is a great start, guys. It's going to be hot all question period once it gets going.
Impose apparently a series of guidelines that are not approved by the Board of the Internal Economy or voted on by the House of Commons, and that you're doing it in violation of one of the existing rules that is already in place, suggests a very serious and unusual departure from the normal way in which Parliament exists.
Like and subscribe.
The government is here to serve Parliament, not the other way around. We ask that you allow us to proceed the question period and you make your statement afterwards.
All right. That's how you talk to your manager when your manager doesn't like the way that you're conducting yourself, I suppose. Huh. And now I wonder what it would be interesting to hear what they're whispering. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do now? Yeah, guys. So I'm Ehren. This is Question Period Canada. It's a new channel we're trying. We're doing. And it's fun. We make fun, silly videos, treat Canadian politics as the entertainment that it is while we're learning. Because
I'd like to thank the honourable member for
being in touch is
for his
important.
intervention. I would like to inform the House, though, this is not the first time that the Speaker has interrupted the proceedings to make a statement from the chair between the point of SO31s and oral questions.
It's so calm. I like his calm.
Colleagues, so that everybody can understand this very clearly, my immediate predecessor, for example, has done this at least
Who had to resign
occasions.
because he invited a
It
Nazi
has also been done.
to Parliament.
It also has been done by speakers in the past. I'm going to continue with this statement. I think it's important for all members to understand
Yes, you're
this.
going to have to listen
And I'd
to
like
his statement,
reassure
guys.
the member
He's
for
going to get it
Carleton
out.
and all members that there are going to be no new standing orders that would require the approval of you members. But we're talking about, I invite you to listen to this statement. I would invite you to listen to this statement
sit there and
in
shut
order
up.
to be able to improve order and decorum in this House.
Okay, he's big on order and decorum. So is Tuvok from Star Trek, Voyager. It's just like separated at birth, twins perhaps.
As promised before the constituency week, the chair would like to make a statement on order and decorum in the House. In a very simple way,
Here we go.
order and decorum are
order
signs
and
of
decorum,
respect
guys.
for each other and for the institution. Respect, which is necessary
Golden
for
rule.
productive debate in a deliberative assembly. It is, in fact, fundamental to Parliament's ability to fulfill its constitutional role.
I decided to stand for Speaker because in the 8 years that I've been a member, and prior to that as a keen follower of parliamentary proceedings, I have noticed a deterioration in the collective decorum in this place. It is important to note that this deterioration was not inevitable. It is not a natural outgrowth of the advent of social media. We can choose to conduct ourselves differently. I suspected other members felt the same way, and during the many discussions that I held recently with members from all sides of the House, confirmed this feeling. Decorum and disorder was the one issue that was most often mentioned to me in the one-on-one exchanges that I had, and not just in passing. Perhaps most importantly of all, members felt that bad behavior dishonors not only ourselves as elected members of Parliament, but also dishonors Canadian democracy.
But who said it? Who said that to you?
On October
Or are you
3rd,
just saying that somebody said that?
2023,
Right.
when I was invited to take the chair for the first
Don't
time,
name names.
I said, we need to make sure that we treat each other with respect and that we show Canadians an example, because there can be no dialogue unless there is mutual understanding of respect. There can be no ability to pursue arguments, to make points be heard, unless we all agree to extend to each other that sense of respect and decorum.
Greg's letting them know in his way. This is him trying to express
I
himself.
meant it then. I mean it now.
Members should not be surprised by my statement today. Not long ago, on May 8th, 2023, my predecessor rightly said, in a ruling on decorum which can be found at page 14,090 of the Bates, quote, "The rules and practices governing order and decorum are intended in part to ensure that proceedings are conducted in a civil, courteous, and respectful manner. In particular, members are expected to address each other through the chair and to avoid making any offensive or disruptive remarks. For example, stating directly or indirectly that a colleague is a liar or has lied is unacceptable," unquote. The honourable member from...
He's wearing it. He's wearing it. Did you hear the sigh?
Point of order.
He doesn't sigh when he sits down every
This was a
time.
filibuster, but for the purposes of planning, I'm wondering if the Speaker might indicate to the House how long he expects to continue.
There are sides, guys.
The member, this should continue it's not a point of order first, thank you, but I will let members know that it will continue for the time that it will take. It shouldn't be too long.
Interesting. These politicians, man, they're clowns. They know how to answer or not answer questions.
So
It will take as long as it takes. Do you think he's thinking this was a good idea to try to do
The
today?
House is a place where freedom of speech is primordial and where views are strongly held and vigorously defended. While the chair must allow the widest range of individual expression possible, members are expected to be mindful of their words and behaviors within the realm of what would be considered parliamentary.
It's more fun when there's no rules, Greg.
I wish to echo the
Come
words
on.
of Speaker
Sit in
Milliken,
your seat. You be
which
quiet.
can be found at page 3,719 of the October 5, 2006 debates, and I quote,
He's trying to
"But the
steal all our
exercise
fun.
of that freedom of speech
We want to see them
ought to
go,
be
right?
based on the
We want to see
underlying
rowdy.
principle of respect
I
to the
do.
House and to other
It's more fun.
members. Conduct should not cause a disruption to proceedings." It would be an understatement to say that we have been plagued in recent weeks by what any observer would have to admit is an unusually noisy chamber, particularly during question period. Some of the disorders
It
being
should be
triggered
noisy during
by
question
questionable
period. We're
language
trying
or
to have fun
provocative
here.
statements, but much of it also appears to be
See them
generated by
argue? It's fun.
interruptions, interjections, or other demonstrations, actions that seem to be designed to drown out or plainly disrupt those asking questions or those answering them. But when
He's going to
the
get hacked up
noise
later for this, I'm sure of it.
reaches levels where no one, not even the speaker, can hear what is being said, the House as a whole loses some credibility. So, I appeal to all honorable members for cooperation. I will continue
Seems kind of like a
to try
reprimand.
to give members wide latitude in expressing their points
He
of
doesn't,
view.
though. He always stands up and says,
But I ask for all members' assistance in ensuring that we can all hear the member who's been recognized and who has the floor, end quote.
De maintenant, je me montre
Going forward,
That's enough, Greg.
I will be fair
Wrap it up.
and will ensure that all members, regardless of which side of the House they sit on, can freely speak their minds, vigorously hold the government to account, challenge each other's ideas, and thoroughly consider public business. As your speaker, I will equally be looking for ways of improving the overall decorum in the House, and I will be dogged in that pursuit.
I commit to doing this
We've got
as
a
your
little bit of
servant
gossip next
and
time
to
we-
enforce the rules that you yourselves have given the House
down.
on your behalf. I will do so with humility and also with an outreached hand. Within our purview,
Man, oh, man.
all the chair occupants will work collectively to ensure that the rules of order and decorum are respected,
Wrap it
applied
up.
consistently, and to the same standards. As another one of my predecessors, the member for Regina Capel, stated on December 12,
lamenting now.
2012, at pages 13,215
Days gone by.
and 13,216 of debates, quote, "My task as Speaker is to ensure that the intensity of feelings expressed around some issues is contained
what do you
within the
think
bounds
of Greg?
civility without infringing on the freedom of speech that members enjoy. The chair tries to ensure that our rules are adhered to in a way that encourages mutual respect. However, all members will recognize that ultimately the Speaker must depend on their collective self-discipline to maintain order and to foster decorum. My authority to enforce the rules depends on the cooperation of the House. Our electors expect all members to make greater efforts to curb disorder and unruly behavior. So I urge all members to reflect on how best to return to the House to the convivial
Question period in a couple of minutes here.
cooperative
Question
atmosphere I know
period
all
is
of
going
us
to start.
would prefer.
It's going to be off the
Unquote.
charts. Guaranteed.
Étant
Andrew
donné
Scheer,
l'esprit collégial-
Poiliev,
Because of
There's
the
a few
collegial
others are not gonna
character
let
of the
this go.
House and the
Like,
broad
this-
privileges enjoyed by its members, no one, not even the Speaker, can act unilaterally to improve the level of decorum in the chamber. Despite my
it's
own
going to get
strong
hot, guys.
individual
Guaranteed.
determination,
Everybody's going to be fired
to
up.
maintaining the dignity and
The
decorum
Conservatives
of
are
the
gonna
House,
be real
ultimately,
sour,
those efforts will come
which
to
is
naught
going
without
to make the
members
Liberals
themselves
really
taking
sour.
responsibility for their behavior and conduct and showing
FPC,
their own
Champagne, he's
personal
gonna
efforts in
flip.
comporting their business in an appropriate and civil manner. I will therefore need your help in order to succeed.
Observed over the years as a member, the following issues have
I wonder if
deteriorated
Trudeau's here today.
and need to be
I haven't seen him,
addressed.
so
First,
I haven't seen any of the Liberal
excessive,
side yet.
disruptive, and loud heckling must be toned down. Occasional heckling has always been a part of our proceedings, and a light-hearted or clever comment will often enhance debate rather than detract from it. However, far too often,
I wonder what
heckling
he's
is
going to be
boorish
like after
and
his
rude.
speech. Is he
designed
going
to
to just be
intimidate,
hands in the air and
insult,
like, well, I
or
tried?
drown out
Or
others.
is he going to try to
Members have a right to be heard and to
power them
hear
and
the
take
proceedings
control?
going on around them. The frequent and time-consuming disorder it creates must stop. Excessive interruptions must be curtailed.
He wrote the same
There's
line
some,
down on 10 different
Yankees
pages and keeps flipping the
Second,
pages and reading the same line.
While I'm committed to protecting the individual
Jumping.
privilege of freedom of
Jesus,
speech necessary for our debates, too frequently our ideas and thoughts are
It's going to
expressed
get hot
in
here, though,
provocative
guys.
terms,
I'm pretty sure that
leading to tense exchanges
Poilievre's going to be
that
sour
harm
about
the
this one.
necessary
I don't think he's much for
collegiality
being
for our
reprimanded.
work. We have in the past had members likening their colleagues to Mussolini, or calling each other racists, or shouting obscenities.
Holy moly,
Latitude in expressing
guy.
one's point of view will be given, but questionable language and unnecessarily provocative statements will not be tolerated.
Finally, the
Finally,
growing tendency to
finally.
make pointed criticism in a way
Christ
that
on a
is
bike.
unnecessarily personal and designed to denigrate, bully, elicit an emotional reaction, or to attack the
Get it going,
integrity
man.
of the person
Get it going.
introduces a toxicity to our proceedings which hampers our ability to get things done. This includes coming up with
At least we have
fake
something to look
titles for
forward to.
members in order to mock them, or comments that questions their courage, their honesty, or their commitment
They'll be
to their
scrappy
country.
today. I
would
think
also include
at him,
comments designed
too.
to draw attention to the absence
Which
of members as a mean of embarrassing them,
make
even
for
though
an
this is against
excellent
our
question
rules.
period.
As
Excellent
many of my
question period,
predecessors
Canada.
have underscored, there are multiple
We're
places
just about ready to
members
go,
must
guys.
to
Come on,
fulfill
I
their
got a
duties.
feeling it's coming.
I will point out, there are examples of these sorts of comments on all sides of the House. Insofar as personal attacks can be limited, I will use whatever tools I have at my disposal to do so.
He's still going, eh?
Que j'ai souligné se
Whoa.
manifeste sur
The above
Imagine how many
issues
times
tend
he
to be
practiced in
displayed
front of the
most
mirror. He just likes the
prominently
sound of
during
his
statements
own
by
voice.
members and
It's a
daily
Vulcan
question
trait.
period.
Tuvok
This is unfortunate
from Star
because
Trek Enterprise.
this is when our proceedings receive the most attention from those watching or from the public in the galleries, and from which clips are most widely circulated on social media. These are the issues I will focus most of my efforts on resolving. While the House is master of its own proceedings and the Speaker
Master
its
of
servant,
your own domain.
the Chair has the authority to enforce rules of debate to maintain order and decorum so that the House may conduct its business in an orderly fashion. The standing orders of the House state explicitly that the Speaker shall preserve
How many more
order
pieces of
and
paper
decorum
does he have?
and decide
I'm
questions
just kidding.
of order.
Question period
This
needs
duty,
to start soon.
which extends
'Cause
to
if they
the
were
other
late
chair
already-
occupants,
if they were
carries
already
with
late,
it a wide
and I don't mean to be
ranging
interrupting
authority
him, but by
covering
now,
matters as diverse
he can
as
just
the
shut up.
behavior and
Like,
attire
it's
of
enough.
members, the conduct
Points
of proceedings,
taken or not
the
taken or
rules
lost,
of debate,
like-
and disruptions on the floor of the chamber and its galleries.
As such,
I was trying to be a
any
fan.
challenge to the authority of the chair by refusing to respect a
Shut the
call
hell
to
up, bud.
order, to withdraw language ruled to be unparliamentary.
They're either
to
gonna listen
cease
or they're not.
Irrelevance and
They
repetition
would have
in
gotten
debate,
your point
or
by
to
now.
Stop interrupting a member who has
Or
the floor.
you're making it worse
can
for
be
yourself.
addressed through recourse
I would
to
guess
a
that
number
that's
of
what's
options.
happening.
For instance,
You're just pissing
the
them
chair
off.
may recognize another member or refuse to recognize a member until the offending remarks are retracted and the member apologizes immediately in person or at a later time.
I am almost getting frustrated.
As a last
Seriously.
resort, the chair
I'm gonna
may
go to a different
name
camera and wait for him
a
to
member
finish.
the most severe disciplinary power at the Speaker's disposal. In the days and weeks ahead, as I proceed as outlined above, I will continue my discussions with individual members as well as with House officers in the different parties to see how we can join forces in our collective objective to improve the
I
decorum
must think he's
in our
going to make
proceedings.
some overtime by keeping everybody late.
I thank all members for their attention and invite them
You're
to
losing me,
reflect on the
Greg.
statement I've made today.
I wanted to be a fan.
I also wish to indicate that members are always free to come and see me if they wish to discuss the matter further.
Si les membres
I thank the members.
Oh my goodness. Okay, thank you for wrapping it up. Damn. Yeah, standing ovation from the Liberals. Who would, for that long, you could have said that in 2 minutes.
Questions orales, oral questions.
Oral questions, guys. Oral questions.
The
All
honorable
right,
leader of the
here we go.
opposition.
Poilievre's going to be pissed. So let's get it going, guys. Let's get it going.
longues années de cette
After 8 long years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and especially in Quebec, where the inflation rate has hit 4.8%, higher than elsewhere in Canada. After 8 years of inflationary deficits, the solution proposed by the Liberals and the Bloc is to significantly increase costs through a tax on gas and diesel that will increase the cost of every product that's transported. Will they put an end to these inflationary policies so that Quebecers can buy food and gas and housing?
I wonder who's up to bat for the Liberals. That'll be who's up first. Is Trudeau there? No.
The Honourable Minister.
All right. FPC is pretty fun too.
We have no lessons to take from the
pointer.
Conservatives. What the Conservatives are proposing for the Canadians listening to us is to cut services, cut investments, and cut the future of Canada. We have a plan to help Canadians prosper in the 21st century economy. And what Canadians are realizing is that the Conservatives are too dangerous for our country. Thank you.
Couple more. He'll do French one more time, but then he'll be firing in English, I bet. I'm guessing. And he sounds awesome. His English is tremendous. And he is a wild clown. Check out my other video. I did a Cabinet of Clowns Trudeau video. You can find it.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I will ignore that member's lack of decorum and his emotionally charged.
Right there, firing back at Greg. Pierre's not going to take it.
Because I can actually take it. I can take the debate and have it out in the open. But Mr. Speaker,
He's
he talks
entertaining,
about
guys.
cuts.
It's a funny
Canadians
clown.
are making cuts in their own lives. We now have a new phenomenon in Canada, which is the middle class homeless. We used to just have young people living in their parents' basements. Now we have parents moving into their children's basements. Will the Prime Minister reverse the inflationary policies that doubled housing costs and are forcing seniors to move into their kids' basements just to avoid going homeless?
We need a couple of repeals, guys. We need a couple of things changed. Have you noticed things are expensive?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable colleague for the question. Canada has a AAA credit rating, the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and low unemployment. And in addition, we will always be there to support the middle class.
Smallest
Mr.
country in
Speaker.
G7, we should have the smallest deficit,
old age seniors with the old age security benefit, whether it is 11 million Canadians with the grocery rebate, whether it is 4 million Canadians with the business supports. Mr. Speaker, what we do on this side of the House is invest in Canadians to build a stronger economy day after day, year after year, and we will continue on that course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you feel like you've been invested in the last 8 years, that they've been doing it for you?
The opposition.
Incompetent rating agencies mean
grocery
absolutely
rebate?
nothing to the, quote, unhoused seniors who say that for affordable housing in Metro Vancouver, that the only thing that turns up is nothing, nothing, and nothing. Nor does it mean anything to, and I quote again, this is even from the CBC, living in his broken down car, homeless man says he has until Thursday to move. We have both nurses and carpenters living in parking lots after 8 years of this Prime Minister doubling housing costs. Will they stop driving up the cost of living so that Canadians can house, feed, and heat their families?
My house is freezing right now. I don't have my heat on. It's 5 degrees here in Nova Scotia today.
The Honourable Minister.
Very much, Mr.
Can't
Speaker.
afford
And
it.
here's the truth for seniors. Fixing the global inflation
Mark Holland's
problem
all right.
is not going to be fixed by cutting dental support to 3.5 million seniors, and that's what the Leader of the Opposition would do. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, to get to the tens of billions of dollars of cuts he's talking about, it would mean cuts to our healthcare system. It would mean making sure, unfortunately, that the investments like we saw in BC to transform our health system won't happen. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It doesn't mean just poor health outcomes. It means more costs in the future. It means a less resilient country, and it means a much worse future for our seniors. That's what he's peddling, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
They always
Actually,
say, like,
this government that's promising over $10 billion of cuts right now because they suddenly woke up and realized that they were bankrupt. When we were in office, we actually managed to balance the budget while growing healthcare spending every single year. In fact, growing it faster than the current government. But today, the biggest threat to the health of Canadians is homelessness. People are losing their homes because this Prime Minister has doubled the cost of housing. Will he realize, with people living in parking lots, that after 8 years, he's just not worth the cost?
Mr. Speaker, unlike the party
Look, Greg is up already.
side of the House, we don't balance budgets on the backs of Canadians.
They
On the
ignored it.
contrary, Mr. Speaker, we invest in Canadians. Let me give you one example.
Do you
Mr.
feel invested
Speaker.
in?
Lifting almost 500,000 children out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. And every single time there's an opportunity to support Canadians, Mr. Speaker, what does the other side of the House do? They vote against. Contre. That is not the way in which we will build a strong economy.
She wasn't on paper, I'll give her that. When I say on
Once
paper,
again, I'd like to remind members
not
to
a
please
fan
conduct
member,
themselves in a way that is appropriate.
come on, Greg, you had
And
your
I'll
chance.
also
They
ask
didn't listen.
members
They
to
don't
please,
care. Shut up.
Keep the voices down so
I think
the
you're
speaker
sweet.
can hear
I do.
at
I think you're a
least
nice guy,
what is
but-
going on. If not, the members would ask a question. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker,
Here we go.
the member is right about one thing. They
Buddy
don't
clock.
balance the budget on the backs of Canadians. They run massive inflationary deficits on the backs of Canadians. On another matter, Mr. Speaker, our hearts were broken to see a hospital in Gaza struck by a missile. Disinformation peddled by Hamas and regurgitated by CBC was then amplified by the Prime Minister. Does he agree with President Biden that the offending missile originated with terrorists in Gaza?
I don't know.
Then I have minutes.
Sorry for all the
Yeah,
death.
Minister.
Speaker, our
in
government has
Gaza.
been
Oh
unequivocal
no,
in
the boring
condemning
clown,
terrorist attacks
Karina
of
Gould.
Hamas against Israeli citizens. We are also adamant
She's
that
the most
attacks
boring clown.
on civilians are wrong. We call on all parties to observe international law.
Yeah.
Our hearts go out to the innocent Palestinian victims that have died as a result of this attack, and we will continue to work with partners around the world to call for a humanitarian corridor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What do you think of Karina Gould? Pretty exciting, huh?
The Honourable Leader of Village Chambre.
Dans le terrible conflit qui déchire
This is
la
the
bande
leader
de
of the
Gaza.
bloc.
The conflict tearing
Sharp-dressed
Gaza
man.
apart means that civilians are leaving in unspeakable distress.
I don't know about the bloc, though.
Humanitarian aid needs to
What do you
get to
think?
the Gaza Strip. It needs to be able to get there without condition, regardless of the origin of those conditions. Canada needs a strong voice to do anything in this context. They need to reach out to friends in Israel or Palestine and friends of peace. Will Canada join the initiative with the United States, Germany, France, the UK, and others?
Then I have
Yeah, we
minutes.
haven't joined up to do
Minister.
anything.
Monsieur le Président, et j'aimerais
Probably send some of
Thank
your
you,
money.
Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question.
Oh no.
The Minister
Again?
of Foreign Affairs was one of the first
like her
to
top.
go to that region in order to be there for our Israeli and Palestinian friends. We were one of the first nations to give a strong voice to the situation between Israel and Hamas.
She might be the
And
only
we are there
MP that's more
to
interesting
continue to
when she's being
have a
translated.
humanitarian corridor, and we
The
are there to
translator's
defend the
voice
rights
is
of
more
all
exciting.
civilians in that zone.
Karina Gould
Then I
is
have député.
The honourable
lame.
leader or member for Bellechambly. The United Nations cannot be heard alone. They need friends and credibility. Am I given to understand that the Prime Minister over the last 11 days has not spoken once to the President of the United States? In the countries neighboring Quebec, they say you have to walk the talk, or les bottines doivent suivre les babines. We need to go beyond good intentions. Should the Prime Minister not consider
He's a
walking
sharp-dressed
the
man,
talk?
Eves. He is a He's the sharpest dressed guy, I think, in the House.
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, dès le
Oh,
début
Lord.
Thank
Again,
you, Mr.
Karina.
Speaker. From the beginning of this
Again.
truly horrendous crisis for everyone involved, many innocent victims have fallen.
She's only got
in
about 5 sentences that she
region.
can remember to say.
The Prime Minister and
So she's probably on sentence
Minister of
number
Foreign
3.
Affairs have been in contact with allies, with stakeholders in the region. We are there to play a leadership role and a collaborative role in order to help resolve this conflict. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Before Thanksgiving,
All right,
the Minister of
Jag
Industry
meat.
said
What do you think of
prices
jag
for
meat?
groceries are coming down. Canadians just needed to check out grocery flyers. But now the Prime Minister, or the Minister, is backtracking, saying, well, he's not sure because the grocery CEO's plans are too secret. If the Minister can't get answers, then we will. Will the Minister of Grocery Flyers support our motion to summon the grocery CEOs back to Parliament again?
I think that the coalition hurts Jag Meat more than anybody else. Not the NDP, just him as a leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really surprised in the way of that question, Mr. Speaker. We did one thing that has never been done in Canadian history. We called the 5 CEOs of the groceries in Ottawa, Mr. Speaker, and we expressed the frustration of 40 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker, about the price of grocery. I would enjoy all members of this House to give the same message that I give. Make sure you help Canadians and help us to stabilize price in Canada. That's what Canadian expects.
He's a wild clown. I think that he'll be the next leader of the Liberal Party.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Clearly, the Minister's plan to ask them nicely is not working.
That's right.
On va résumer. Un jour.
Let's summarize. One day, the Minister says
Yeah, hope for Jag Meat too.
they need to check prices in flyers. But now they don't know CEO's plans to stabilize prices because their plans are too secret. It's very clear that the Minister doesn't have a plan, so we can give him one. We tabled a new motion to force CEOs of large grocery chains to come back to appear before committee. Will the government support it? Yes or no?
Here's something to watch, to pay attention to when they're speaking.
The Honourable Minister.
Notice that they all have tiny hands.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the question from the leader of the NDP. Not only is that what we proposed, but I wrote to the chair of the committee to ask the chair to invite the CEOs of large grocery chains in Canada to share their plan with Canadians. So I'm glad
one hand in his
to hear
pocket.
his question because we are the ones who asked the chair of the parliamentary committee to ask the CEOs to come and appear before Canadians.
He runs out of steam, though. He doesn't have a very big
is
fuel
saying
tank. Yes,
that they have
Melissa
not
Landsman.
been briefed
She's
on
fine.
verified intelligence confirmed
Firecracker.
by the President of the United States
Firecracker clown.
that has led to the retraction of media reports around the world about yesterday's explosion by IRGC-backed terrorists that killed innocent civilians in Gaza. After 8 years, is the relationship with our closest allies, our Five Eyes partners, so damaged that they don't even share with Canada what they have already told the rest of the world?
Little Jewish member of parliament right there, Melissa Landsman. Firecracker clown. She's fine.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Goes right at them.
The situation in Gaza is a tragedy. The loss of Palestinian lives is absolutely horrifying. This is an unthinkable act, and it's imperative that innocent Palestinians be protected and that international law be upheld. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, she didn't have much to say there. Didn't have much to say there.
The Business Council of Canada is warning the Civil NDP
right.
government they
Love
can
this
no
guy.
longer run large permanent deficits.
One of the best
without
speakers
fear.
in the
After
House.
8 long years, this Prime Minister added more debt than every government between 1867 and 2015 combined, creating 40-year highs in inflation and the fastest interest rate hikes ever. There is a massive fear of a looming mortgage default crisis if they don't balance the budget now. He's just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister stand up today and support our common sense, fiscally responsible motion to bring in balanced budgets so Canadians can keep their homes?
Did you hear about the cabin fever that Trudeau has? He's got a bad case.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague talks about fear. There is also fear
Needs
among
3
Canadians
vaccines.
that the Conservatives are going to cut programs that they rely on. Mr. Speaker, this
Come on,
week,
Rachel
this
Bedine.
week, the Canada Child Benefit checks
The darkest hair I've ever seen.
At Canadians' doors, Mr. Speaker, and in the members' riding in Calgary Forest Lawn, that means that individuals will get up to $10,000 lowered from their child care fees. Mr. Speaker, there are also 400,000 families in Calgary Forest Lawn that get the Canada Child Benefit checks.
They all do have little hands, you've noticed? Maybe it's because they've never done it. This is, hi Mark, hey William, what's up? Oh God, Greg, let them have their fun. Look, he's just trying to control them and they're not paying attention to him stalling things.
From Dufferin, Caledon.
The Prime Minister promised that interest rates were going to remain low, and Canadians believed him, so they went out, they bought homes, and they took out mortgages. But after 8 years of liberal inflationary deficits, interest rates are at a 30-year high, and many Canadian families are now not finding they can't pay their mortgage. In fact, the Business Council of Canada just said governments can't permanently run deficits without fear. So will this finance minister stop running her inflationary deficits so interest rates will come down and Canadian families won't lose their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Speaker, and of course, allow me to correct the record. There are actually 400,000 families in Alberta collecting the Canada Child Benefit checks, Mr. Speaker. Those checks are coming out this week. And Mr. Speaker, under what the Conservatives are proposing, they would have those checks completely removed. They would be cutting those supports for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I will remind you that while we continue to support Canadians, we are also running the lowest deficit here in Canada among all G7 countries.
They keep going to the G7 deficit. It's ridiculous.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one cut that we're going to make. We're going to cut about 80 members from that side of the House.
Good one. Good one.
When we form a common sense conservative government. And when we do that, we will address the concerns like the ship worker in Vancouver who's paying $7,500 a month for a mortgage. Wow. And what do they say? They talk about a AAA credit rating. How out of touch. They're gaslighting Canadians. Will they cut these inflationary deficits and get interest rates under control? Yes or no?
Okay, good one. Good one. Good one, Kyle. You're getting it going. Getting it going. I knew it was going to be a fun episode.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to hear a member of the opposition speak about C-SPAN.
I like Jonathan Wilkinson,
too. A very important member of the business community in my riding of North Vancouver. I was very pleased a couple years ago to join the Prime Minister to announce the commitment to build an additional 18 Coast Guard vessels worth almost $16 billion, which will provide well-paid employment for the employees at C-SPAN for decades to come. Mr. Speaker, we are going to create good economic jobs. We are going to ensure economic opportunities for Canadians, and we are going to ensure affordability at the same time.
They shouldn't use words like ashore. They should take that right out of their vocabulary.
I'm going to ask once again for members to please refrain from taking the floor when they are not been recognized by the chair, and to leave the questions so that they can be answered, so that colleagues can hear them.
Is Greg getting on your nerves a little bit? Comment, like, subscribe.
In the coming months, we expect
Paul
to
Hoos
see
is
a
pretty
wave
fun
of
too.
mortgage renewals.
Always
RBC
French
is going
though.
to renew
Always
41%
in French.
of its mortgages, but it's going to be difficult
But
with
he's-
interest
he's
rates that keep
pretty
rising.
fun guy.
We're seeing inflation on mortgage costs reaching over 30% a month. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, nothing's going right. Will he explain to people how they're going to pay their mortgages and not end up in the street?
In fairness to all things political, it's fun to be the opposition.
It's
kind of like the bad guy.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Statistics Canada gave us good news. Inflation went down again here in Canada. Our government continues to work to help Canadians that are having trouble making ends meet. In this House, we have a bill before parliamentarians that will stabilize grocery prices throughout Canada. The Conservatives are playing political games with measures that could help Canadians.
Who's playing political games, do you think?
Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles.
Coalition government sound like a political game to you?
I'm not sure where she read that good news because We
does
heard
to
from
me.
Statistics Canada that inflation went up in Quebec and hit 4.8%. That's the fourth month in a row that Quebec has had the highest inflation rate in Canada. Food inflation's at 6.7%. After 8 years under this Prime Minister with his help from the Bloc, people are literally having trouble feeding their families. Are these the sunny ways promised 8 years ago? This Liberal government's not worth the cost. Does the Prime Minister recognize that in Canada in 2023 it's shameful for people to struggle to feed themselves?
It is a shame. Changed my grocery orders, like, because I can't afford the old ones that I used to eat.
I'm here, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to affordability, we need to help all Canadians, and that's exactly what we're doing on this side of the House. This morning, we've heard a statement that 98% of housing starts are due to programs that will help Canadians
she's got
get a
nothing
roof,
to say,
and we're going to
guys.
continue to work on
Her
that.
legs must be tired. She didn't want to stand
The
up.
Honourable Member for Davignon, Lamitis, Matan, Matapédia.
All right.
Mr. Speaker, S&P Global
Michaud?
revealed that Canada is
Christina
going
Michaud.
to be one of the world's leading oil producers by 2024. Forget the green transition. Canada is going to be
How
one of
pink is
the
that
biggest oil producers on the planet. The Conservatives applaud this, but it's not their doing. It's the Liberals doing.
She's sassy.
Under their watch, oil production went up by 10% in the midst of a climate crisis. Under their watch, Canada will produce 500,000 more barrels of oil every day. Is that really the environmental record Liberals want to leave as their legacy?
Hey, throw an environment at the Liberals. It's interesting, right?
Before the minister answers the question, I'd like to ask the member from Signal Hill to please wait his turn to be recognized by the chair to take the floor. The Honourable Minister.
Come on, bud.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Wilkinson.
L'honorable collègue savent que,
Get it going.
sait que le cause de changement.
My honourable colleagues know
He's doing
that
well.
climate change
Sometimes
is
I feel
caused by
for
greenhouse
it doesn't
gas
matter if you're
emissions,
English
and
or
we're going
French.
to reduce
Anglophone,
those emissions
francophone.
in every sector of the economy.
You got away most of your life without
We
having
have
to
a
speak the
detailed
other
plan
language.
to
It must be
reduce
challenging
greenhouse gas
when you have
emissions
to.
and to grow an economy that will be prosperous in an economy that will be low in carbon. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
Liberals are giving short answers
The
today.
Honourable Member for Repentigny. Canada is going to
She's
become
block
a
as well.
worldwide
She gets,
driver
she's
for oil
firecracker
production
though.
2024 thanks to Trans Mountain. Trans Mountain is going to enable Canada
Look at
to
her.
break
She's always on the
oil
paper,
production
too.
records
She's
and
always on the
therefore
paper.
break pollution records. But taxpayers are paying for Trans Mountain, and it's costing us $30.9 billion.
Finger pointer.
$30.9 billion is almost $800 a person, including babies. The Liberals are charging us $800 each to pollute more. Not to mention subsidies and the costs of natural disasters. How
flipping
dare
out.
the Liberals ask Quebecers to pay to pollute more?
Oh, look at her. She's an animated clown.
The Honourable Minister.
All right, wild clown.
I thank my colleague for her question, but I'm wondering why she's
Check out his
not
body
talking
language,
about
man.
what the government has
It's
done
funny.
recently.
His gestures
We
are great.
recently announced the biggest investment in the history of Quebec called Northvolt. That's going to make batteries for electric vehicles. My colleague should have focused on that issue because not only will Quebec be a champion of the car industry, it's going to be a champion of the green economy. That's what we're doing.
He's going to be at a gas by now, though. Like, he's going to
Over
run
and
out of
over, this
steam.
Liberal NDP government promised interest rates
She's
would
angry
not
as well.
go up.
Michelle
But after
Ferrari.
8 miserable years of this
doesn't
Prime
mess around.
Minister, Canadians know that is not true. Mortgage defaults and forced home sales are on the rise. Lindsay is one of hundreds who wrote to me to tell me about her skyrocketing mortgage rate. She's paying an extra $1,250 a month. She doesn't have an extra $1,250 a month. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So when will he stop his inflationary spending so Canadians like Lindsay can keep their home?
Imagine having an extra $1,250 a month just to throw at expenses that you need to, like,
Mr.
you have
Speaker,
to
last week I
incur,
had the
living
opportunity to
expenses.
visit Peterborough, that member's riding, where I announced $42 million for the construction or renovation of over 1,100 units of housing. You know what's interesting, Mr. Speaker?
Peter's pretty
that
subdued.
member voted against every program that made that funding possible, Mr. Speaker, and then she tried to take credit for it. It's astounding what the Conservatives continue to do.
He's
What
made this
Canadians
point a
need is
number of
government
times
to be
over the
behind them,
last
to see more
week.
construction built, to see the Canada Child
I
Benefit.
think old Michelle
continue to
might have
effect.
taken some
Dental
credit for
care,
something she
childcare,
wasn't
they're
supposed to.
against all of those, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary-Mindeport.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, the deficit continues to rise. In March, the finance minister said that this year the deficit was going to be $40 billion. Well, the parliamentary budget officer just told us that she was off by at least $6 billion.
Wow.
Earlier this month, in a Senate committee, finance officials couldn't even say what the Liberal NDP government is spending on debt interest charges. This Prime Minister simply isn't worth the cost. So when will this Prime Minister come up with a plan to balance the budget so Canadians can keep their homes?
She has too much makeup on. Her eyes are sticking together.
Mr. Speaker, I find it highly shocking that Albertans
shocking.
from the Conservative Party in this House are
Randy.
absolutely silent on a matter that
Randy's
really
kind of a
affects the
dork.
middle class in Alberta. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the government of Alberta trying to take Alberta pensioners out of the Canadian pension plan, destabilizing the pension plan for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. They talk a big game in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, but when it comes to actually defending Albertans, they sit on the sidelines while we have their backs.
I don't know, Randy. Randy might be a dorky clown. Might be. Oh, come on, guys. Seriously?
The honourable member from Mégantic-Clara. After years of inflationary spending, the Prime Minister has
Luke's
literally
alright.
killed the dream of young Quebecers to become homeowners. Imagine a young Montrealer has to earn $116,000 a year
He wears
in
this
order to buy a
tie
house,
very often. It's
which
nice.
doesn't include a
he wears it
20%
all the
down
time.
payment.
cool
How can a
glasses,
young
too.
person earn that kind of salary and put money aside for that? After 8 years, did the Liberals realize that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost and that people in the middle class can no longer afford a Prime Minister that's mortgaging their future? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
It's pretty fun.
Merci, Monsieur le
All right,
Président.
Rachel, what do you got
Thank you,
this
Mr.
time?
Speaker. What Montrealers don't understand is why Conservatives are delaying the implementation of measures that will help build more apartments, more homes throughout the country. We have a bill before this House, and the Conservatives, even those who said publicly they'd vote for it, well, they don't want it to move forward. We're being slowed down, and we can't deliver because the Conservatives are delaying a bill in this House, and it's shameful.
Darkest hair I've ever seen, I think.
The honourable member from
Come on,
Mégantic-Clara. The
Snap.
Liberals
Sometimes, because he's usually kind of...
should have called so that we could discuss it. They're the ones who are delaying passage of this bill after 8 years of the consequences of Liberal action are disastrous. In Quebec, inflation is the highest in the country, nearly 5% for the fourth month in a row. Like all parents in Quebec, I'm worried for my children's future. They're going to be facing the highest interest rates in the last 40 years. Food is too expensive, rent is unaffordable, and interest rates are skyrocketing. When will they stop mortgaging the future of our children?
Mortgaging the future of our children.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know the Conservatives love to claim that they can give us lessons in economics, but the last time they were in power, not only did they leave behind a mess for Liberals to clean up, they cut in pensions.
What do you guys think of Pascal?
They cut in EI. They cut in border security.
Normal size
the Army,
hands.
Prison veterans.
It's interesting.
Federal prisons, rather, in science and research. Here, we support economic growth, but the Conservatives are only good for axing. They're not so good at calculating.
Then I have Député de Vancouver Est.
The City of Toronto and housing advocates warn that unhoused people will die as the weather gets colder. Toronto's shelter system, the largest in Canada, is beyond capacity. Hundreds of people being turned away every day, including refugees and asylum seekers. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments walked away from housing and left the city scrambling to house people in need. Toronto is pleading for support. Will the Liberals step up and provide the funding required to the City of Toronto so that no one has to sleep or die on the streets this winter?
You don't want that to happen to anybody? I haven't seen polka dots in a while.
Mr. Speaker, I've worked with that member for a number of years now, and I don't doubt for a moment her commitment to housing. And she knows, because she voted for it, that we doubled the funding for homelessness through the Reaching Home initiative. And in fact, Toronto's received $290 million to combat homelessness. We will continue to work with not-for-profit organizations that are on the ground doing the vital work to get people off the street and providing them with the wraparound supports needed that they need, rather, to make a transition towards something better.
Good job.
Peter's well spoken.
Mr. Speaker, homelessness in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody is up by 86%. Community leaders from the Tri-Cities Homeless and Housing Task Group are calling for political courage. I agree. People unable to find a home is past the point of a crisis, and with colder weather on its way, action is needed. But the Liberals are out of touch, and their lack of concern is appalling. What are the Liberals going to do to get people into affordable homes before the winter?
Affordable home seems like a thing of the past. Unless you're
The government was the first government in Canadian history, in fact, to recognize that there is a human right to housing. And we continue to act in that vein through the National Housing Strategy, a strategy that has resulted in 70,000 people being taken off the street. 122,000 people who were very close to being homeless, no longer in that position because of the vital supports that they've been given. They are now housed. We'll continue to do everything we can, and we embrace partnership through working with provinces, municipalities,
Watch
and
him
I
snap
emphasize
his button before he sits down. It's real
that are key
slick.
to all of this.
Good job. You should see what he can do with the bra. Bam.
Speaker, our government is focused on helping Atlantic Canada drive the tremendous
Cody,
economic opportunities that exist for clean energy in our region. That's exactly why we advanced Bill C-49 in close partnership with Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia. We also have a mutual goal of getting off coal-fired electricity while expanding clean energy grids. Premier Higgs and Houston were both in Ottawa this week to talk about their provincial plans to do just that. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources explain how our government is working in cooperation with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to support that crucial transition while being mindful of affordability? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
They do this all the time where they tee up their own side, but they're so bad at it.
Thank you to the
They don't put any work into it. One guy knows he's going to be asking the question, the other guy knows he's going to be
Atlantic
answering.
Liberal colleagues stood up against the Conservatives who opposed Bill C-49, including Conservative members from Atlantic Canada, whose communities will benefit from the good, sustainable jobs and economic opportunities that this act will bring. This week, Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick agreed to advance collaboration and progress on delivering clean, affordable, and reliable electricity while phasing out coal by 2030, driving to net zero electricity grid by 2035. This will fight climate change and create good jobs and economic opportunity across Atlantic Canada.
Député de Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the State Department updated their travel advisory to Lebanon to the highest level, advising all U.S. citizens of the following.
He usually goes pretty hard.
Do not travel to Lebanon. But the government's overall travel advisory for Lebanon advises Canadian citizens to avoid non-essential travel, which is not the highest level. Why is this government always a dollar short and a day late when it comes to protecting the safety and security of Canadians overseas?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Terrible thing that's happening
Speaker, and
over
I
there.
would disagree with the honourable member. We are never late
gonna be a short
protecting
answer.
Canadians. We will always stand up for the security and safety of Canadians here in Canada and abroad. As the Speaker knows, yesterday the minister indicated that Canadians in Lebanon should make plans to leave.
Scarf.
We are aware that the situation could be volatile there, so we want to make sure Canadians are safe. So she has advised Canadians to leave the area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How does someone like that get elected to an important position like that?
Halton Hills.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government has been late. It was late in the fall of Kabul in August of 2021. Has the government not learned the lessons of 2006 and 2021 of Beirut and Kabul? Throughout the Middle East and North Africa, there has been an outbreak of protests and violence targeting Western interests and Western missions. Will the government clearly communicate to Canadians information necessary to ensure their safety and inform Canadians about security threats they are facing in the region in a timely manner?
Good job, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh,
and
no.
yes, Mr. Speaker, we have, and
Pam
we will
Damo,
continue
come on.
to. These decisions are made by officials on the best advice. We will continue. We will continue, as we always do, to ensure that Canadians
She's not on
are
paper. I'll
safe
give
when
her
they
that.
are abroad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's why her answers are so short.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker,
She might get fired up
8 years
today.
of inflationary Liberal policies have forced Quebecers deeper into debt. We learned today that Quebec is Canada's inflation champion for the 4th month in a row. Groceries,
Quebec,
housing,
go.
gas, everything's more expensive, courtesy of the Liberals with Bloc support. And the experts don't see any change anytime soon. Can this government finally offer Quebecers some concrete solutions and quit their reckless spending and get rid of the carbon tax?
Then I have
the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm always surprised that there are Conservatives from Quebec talking about the carbon tax because, Mr. Speaker, there is no carbon tax, no federal carbon tax in Quebec. Quebec is a leader when it comes to action against climate change. Mr. Speaker, we don't want to backtrack under the Conservatives. We don't want to stop our action to protect our environment in Quebec. The Conservatives are completely out of touch. The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, 8 years of inflationary Liberal policies have forced Quebecers deeper into debt. Young people are afraid they'll never be able to own a home. Others are suffering from financial anxiety.
It's tough out there, isn't it?
In spite of this, the government and the Bloc are supporting an increase to the carbon tax. We can't say it often enough. A vote for the Bloc will cost you. Why doesn't the Prime Minister give Quebecers a break and backtrack on his inflationary carbon tax?
It's being dramatic at the end.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague talks about cutting, but where?
My man Pablo,
In
most interesting
housing?
man in the world.
Is there
Dos
too much money going to housing? Is it
Right?
pensions? Does she think our seniors are getting too much money? Is it dental care? Is it child care? Perhaps culture? Because they're so happy to make cuts in those areas. Which would they choose? They should stand up and say where they're going to make the cuts.
Here's a
The
question.
honourable member
Why do people clap like this
for
sometimes? You see
Shepherd.
people clapping like this.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals
She doesn't speak
committed
very
a
often. It's
terrible
good to see her
injustice when
get
they
up.
created 2 classes of seniors by refusing to increase the OAS for 65 to 74-year-olds. Today, they have a historic opportunity to fix it. They can treat all seniors fairly in the face of a soaring cost of living and economic uncertainty. Will they support the Bloc's bill, C319, and put an end to 2 classes of seniors by increasing pensions for everyone 65 and over?
Quebec's a nation within a nation, right?
The Honourable
They have
Minister.
that status. I don't think
Mr.
a lot of people
Speaker,
know that,
we've
or
made
many people have
huge
forgotten.
progress in helping seniors out.
Live from CTV.
This has helped reduce poverty among those 65 and over. We restored the retirement age to 65. We increased the GIS, despite the constant opposition from the Bloc. And yes, we increase the OAS for the most vulnerable seniors. Thank you, Mr.
What kind of clown do you think he is? Entertaining clown?
Member
No.
for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, that's not right. If seniors were satisfied with the federal government, groups that represent them like the AREQ, the AQRP, and the AFES wouldn't be on the Hill today. They're here to ask the government to support C319. Seniors are the ones telling us that C319 will make a difference in their lives. They're the ones saying that only a fair pension increase for all seniors will protect them from financial insecurity. That's what seniors want from the Liberals. Will they finally listen and support the bill?
Yeah. Come on, Greg, sit down. Sit down, Greg. That's enough.
Mr. Speaker, we
CTV.
restored the retirement age. We brought it back down from 67 to 65. We increased the GIS. And we did this in spite of the Bloc's opposition. We increased the OAS for those seniors that are the most vulnerable and for those with in need of
He's
dental
more animated than
care
I've seen him
and
other days.
care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député d'Abbotsford.
Today, this House will vote on whether to protect the mentally ill against assisted suicide. But yesterday, the Justice Minister falsely claimed that euthanizing vulnerable Canadians was good public policy and the only way to comply with Canadian law.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're hearing more and more reports of Canadians crying out for help and being offered assisted suicide instead. Is this the sorry state of our mental health system? Millions of Canadians oppose this government's fascination with assisted death. Will this government now bring a full stop to this madness?
Good question. Full stop. That is an important issue. I had a suicide in my immediate family. It was awful.
Thank you very much.
Assisted
Mr. Speaker.
suicide
And of
to a
course,
mental
there is
health
not
person
one
is
among us
probably
in this House that doesn't have people that we love that are deeply vulnerable, that have been in a state of mental health crisis. And every single person in this House wants to make sure that those people get the support and strength they need. That's why we're making critical investments there. But we also have to make sure that people who are trapped in mental illness and deep, profound suffering, that we examine what's the best way to deal with those circumstances. That's why we're working to reconstitute the Joint Committee
but that's
so that we
a
can look at
non-answer,
this
bud.
process, look at how we responsibly deal with these issues in a way that respects and protects vulnerable people.
You gotta peel it back, bud. No, that's a shitty answer, guys.
Each year on November 11th, we gather to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. But now, under this Liberal government, our military chaplains are being told they can't even pray for the fallen. During World War II, chaplains led prayer on the boats on the eve of the D-Day landings. And chaplains have provided last rites to dying soldiers in the fields. But now, the Prime Minister is telling Canadians that on Remembrance Day, they can't even pray for those who fought for our country? What is going on, Mr. Speaker?
Here, here.
Veterans over there? Shameful.
Shameful. Shame.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, écoutez, aujourd'hui.
Mr. Speaker.
Look at her scarf. It looks like my set.
I'd like to give a shout out to our veterans.
I'll do a quick one.
All those who've served
Looks
our
like my set,
country.
or
Everyone, to all these people, we need to say thank you. Thank you to the men and women who, particularly at this point in time, are defending what we do. And November 11th, as it is for many of my friends and colleagues here, on November 11th, we will remember and we will never forget everything our veterans have done for us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shameful, man. The gallery is hot. Who's flipping out over there?
L'honorable député de Selkirk Interlake East.
Oh, Gerard is in the house. Cool. We'll get to see Gerard. He's fun too. Big Ukraine supporter.
Wanting to pay tribute to our veterans.
And it's bad Liberal policy that is actually driving down morale in the Canadian Armed Forces. It was reported that troops are leaving the forces in droves because of the lack of good, affordable housing. And sadly, military families are being forced to ask for donations to help offset the high cost of food and housing. After 8 long years, the troops can no longer afford these Liberals or will make that sacrifice. When will the Prime Minister finally start supporting our troops?
You got to support the troops, guys.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, I don't take any lessons today from this side of the House. Because you know what, Mr. President? When they were in power, they actually cut spending, fall below 1%.
And she's nearsighted.
Let's be very clear. Military members and their families are our top priorities. And we're taking steps to ensure that they are supported. In our budget 2022, we've invested $55 million in residential housing for CAF. We will be there for our troop. We will always to support them, Mr. Speaker.
All right. That's very defensive. Good for you, Marie. Come on, Greg, let it go. Let it go, Greg.
Because the parliamentary secretary was close to me, I was able to hear her answer. I'm not certain if other members were able to hear her as clearly.
Now he's hearing for other people.
I do ask you.
Bring it back, Greg.
Cede the floor to the person who's been recognized by the chair to be able to answer the question so that we can answer
laying down his authority.
The honourable member from Madawaska Ristigouche.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member of the Acadian community in New Brunswick and the proud member for Madawaska Restigouche, I'm pleased to repeat the announcement that was made a short while ago about the Acadian National Celebration for 2024. My colleagues and I, Acadians, want to ensure that these celebrations continue to enjoy support from the federal government. Can the Minister of Canadian Heritage explain how the federal government is supporting the Acadian community, its culture, and its celebrations?
The
Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have to say that my colleagues worked very hard on the announcement that was made today, and I thank them for their cooperation. The announcement today reasserts the federal government's commitment to Acadian culture and history. And with the announcement today, we are going to be providing the $500,000 that is needed. So the we're rounding up to with a $250,000 commitment, and this is great news. And it is added to the funding for the Acadian Convention that is soon to come.
She might be a ponytail clown.
Honorable Député de Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, no one is above the law. This includes the Prime Minister. And after 8 years, he is the only one in Canadian history found guilty of breaking not one, but 2 ethics laws. And now with the Rise scam, the RCMP is investigating criminality in the highest echelons of this government. And what is the Prime Minister's response? He shuts down debate. He shuts down committee, and now he hides behind cabinet confidence.
Good for you.
He is not worth the cost. Under dark clouds of suspicion, will the Prime Minister cooperate now with several RCMP investigations?
All right, Kingpin. It's all right. He's all right.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as a member
Oh my goodness,
should
it's
know
Phoebe
by this
from
time,
Friends.
The Prime Minister does not dictate committees. In fact, it is the responsibility
She's fun though.
of members
Jennifer
of this
goes
House
wild.
to
Wait
determine
and see.
what the committees decide to move forward with. But with that being said, Mr. Speaker, we have faith and trust in the RCMP and those that are set to investigate any accusations of wrongdoing. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to any reports that come forward from the RCMP. And Mr. Speaker, any form of misconduct will have consequences.
If she's back, and she will be, they never get up just for one
You
time.
have the opportunity to ask this question, to please listen to the response without comment. The honourable member from
Come on.
Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, Canadians would love for reports to come from the RCMP, but this Prime Minister is hiding behind cabinet confidences in the NDP Liberal coalition to keep Canadians in the dark about wrongdoing. That's why they weren't able to launch that criminal investigation into this government. And if you can believe it, there's a $1 billion so-called green slush fund that through misappropriation and conflicts of interest, this government has had to suspend because there's 150 million taxpayer dollars that have been mismanaged. Now whistleblowers are looking for employment and reprisal protection, but we know that this government will do what they always do and throw a whistleblower under the bus, just like they did with Jody Wilson-Raybould when she called out corrupt Liberals. Will they protect these whistleblowers?
Whistleblowers need protection too. They certainly do. To change anything that's really broken or corrupt usually takes a whistleblower to bring it up. And if those people don't feel protected, they won't blow the whistle, and terrible things continue.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question, and for Canadians watching at home, remember to this House what are the facts. The moment, Mr. Speaker, that we heard about the allegation of misconduct, we immediately commissioned a third-party independent expert to investigate these allegations. They reported back to me, and Mr. Speaker, we have suspended in good governance the funds that would be disbursed to protect the interest of Canadians, and I can assure this member that we'll take all measures required to make sure that proper governance is applied in all agencies of the Government of Canada.
Okay. He's getting tired. He doesn't have much of a gas tank. Not a lot of endurance.
de Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court has declared the Liberal No More Pipelines Act unconstitutional. Ignoring concerns from Canadians, the Prime Minister and his Minister for Carbon Taxes seemed hell-bent on destroying our natural resource sector. After 8 years of this Prime Minister's anti-resource agenda, Canadians are suffering. Common-sense Conservatives will advocate for our natural resource sector. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Mr. Speaker, when will this NDP Liberal government do the right thing and repeal this disastrous bill?
To anybody who thinks that this broadcast isn't live, it is live.
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians understand that when the Conservative Party was in power, they gutted the environmental legislation that existed in this country in 2012. They undermined the confidence that Canadians had that the environment was going to be protected, that the rights of Indigenous peoples would be respected, such that good projects could go ahead. We have put into place a system of better rules that ensure environmental sustainability, respect for Indigenous rights, that will accelerate the work that we are doing to ensure that good projects move ahead. With respect to the Supreme Court decision, there are some surgical tweaks that we will make to ensure that we actually move forward.
Wilkinson, not too bad. Greg, enough is enough. Take a seat, buddy. They just don't listen to you, man. You're going to feel bad about yourself this evening because they didn't listen? Oh, and he muted them.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Jews in Canada represent just 1% of the population. Yet, as Erwin Collin reminds us, they are victims of 67% of reported hate crimes in Canada.
If that statistic is accurate,
Anti-Semitism
that's
is
wild.
on the rise, and Mr. Speaker, Islamophobia is too. I met with Jewish students yesterday who are afraid to be outed as Jews in their own community for fear of their safety. I have spoken with Muslims who are afraid to be outed as Muslims in their own communities for fear of their safety. Can the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion let us know what role the government is playing in addressing the real anxieties of Jews and Muslims in Canada right now? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's a good question. Hopefully we'll get Melissa Lantzman up there. She's Jewish.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I first want to acknowledge just how difficult the past few days and weeks have been, both for the Jewish and Muslim communities, and I want them to know that all of us here stand with and in solidarity with the communities. On Monday, Mr. Speaker, we announced the appointment of Ms. Deborah Lyons as Canada's Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. And as she stated, Mr. Speaker, she will work closely with her counterpart, the Special Envoy on combating Islamophobia, to support both communities priorities during this difficult time when feelings of anxiety, tensions, and fear are on the rise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, diversity is at the core of who we are as Canadians. We all need to be united in standing up against hate and intolerance whenever, wherever.
She got cut off at the end. I hope they get Phoebe back up there, because Jennifer is the name. For some reason, she reminds me of Phoebe from Friends.
Député de North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, those who join the Canadian Forces do so because they believe in service to their country. Now members are leaving their jobs because they can't keep up with rising house costs. Those who keep us safe can't afford a home. And the Liberals and Conservative solution? Leave housing to condo developers who keep costs so high. The people who serve us deserve better. What is this government going to do to ensure that members of the Canadian Armed Forces do not become homeless?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, I want to say thanks to the member for raising, and I know how advocate she has brought forward a lot of issues in this House. But let me be very clear. Military members and their families are our top priorities, and we're taking steps to ensure that they are supported.
Priorities.
This is why we're working with our stakeholders to align resources and acquire additional housing, Mr. Speaker. In our budget 2022-2023 alone, we've invested $55 million in residential housing for our CAF member. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
L'honorable député de Saanich-Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The incredible
Elizabeth May
is that the portions of the impact assessment law the Supreme Court found were in excess of federal jurisdiction were the sections created by Stephen Harper in wrecking our previous predictable, strong environmental assessment legislation, the so-called designated project list, which was a very bad idea, the expert environmental law panel created under former Minister McKenna and then ignored by the government in bringing forward C-69, has the answers the government needs. Will this minister commit to reviewing those recommendations and putting them in place?
Elizabeth's always well-spoken and makes good points.
We can agree that the Conservative Party destroyed environmental legislation in this country, undermined the integrity of those processes, such that it was incumbent on the new government to actually bring into place better rules that would allow major projects to be built in this country, that respected environmental rights, that respected the rights of Indigenous peoples. We have delivered that. We certainly respect the decision of the court. We will be making amendments to the Act, but the Supreme Court was clear, let me be very clear about this, that Parliament can enact legislation to protect the environment, and we certainly will continue to do that.
This brings to the end of oral questions.
Oh, well, that's the end of question period, guys.
The attention of members to the presence of the gallery.
Well, that was a great episode. It was a little hairy there at the beginning with Tuvok Greg Fergus trying to lay down the law and tell everybody how the decorum had to be. Anyways, that's done. Fun episode. Like, subscribe the channel if you're interested. We're doing this. We're doing Canadian politics, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm Ehren. This is Question Period Canada, QPC. Like, subscribe, get notified. We'll catch you next time, guys. We're heading out for this evening. Thanks a lot.